nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Managing Madrid Podcast. We are going to talk all things Xabi Ball. Xabi Alonso's first season at Real Madrid coming up, loading. We are so excited, and we're so excited that Matt Wiltse came out of hibernation, came out of dad duty and life duty to help us preview Xabi Alonso's first season at Real Madrid on a tactical level. Matt, how you doing, man? Welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Kiyan. I missed this. I've been eager to get back on and be able to share some thoughts. And actually, during the Club World Cup, I put out kind of a new segment, post-game segment that I've actually really enjoyed doing. Like when I can't get on the podcast, it's a nice way to like get the thoughts out. So hopefully people have enjoyed that, and we'll be looking to keep that going and trying to get on the podcast as much as I can.
That's true, and that's a great reminder that if you miss Matt Wiltse, he has been putting up some great post-game pieces from the Club World Cup, obviously, and there's a bit of a lull here before the season starts, but all the Club World Cup, Matt Wiltse covered that on the website. So if you only listen to the podcast and you don't check the website, there's a whole written library on managingmadrid.com. Matt, Xabi Alonso, Real Madrid, first season. And I guess we got a bonus, 6 games here to get a preview, sneak peek of what might be, just sign of things to come. I said it the other day that I think the Club World Cup was beneficial for Real Madrid. And I'm not even talking about the financial aspect of it because they actually won a lot of money. But I think it was really important to see Xabi Alonso have real games at stake where he can try some things. And as a reminder, we have so much time now that has passed since that PSG debacle that we can kind of calm down emotionally and remember, like, this is just beginning. The guy has barely set foot in the door in his first 6 games. We're in perennial USA heat in the summertime at 3 p.m. kickoffs. Places like Miami, Orlando, Philadelphia, New York, Charlotte, and he has new players being integrated. He's tried a bunch of different tactical things, and it's not going to be this seamless transition. And I think overall we saw more good than bad. But we're going to jump into it. Maybe before we start, Matt, why don't you give us your recap of the Club World Cup? What did you like and what did you not like? And then we can jump into the tactical preview.
Yeah, I mean, and to add to kind of the context you just provided there, he also had issues with red cards and penalties given away and stuff like that kind of handicapped him in some of the games as well. So my takeaway from the Club World Cup was overall really positive. Obviously, it ended on a sour note and kind of put things back into perspective for us and maybe grounded us again heading into the new season, which could turn out to be one of the best things that ever happened, and maybe one of the things that Xabi Alonso takes as a learning lesson very early on. And so maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Well, that to be determined on that. But I think more often than not, I came away after those games and like just analyzing those games and the takeaways and everything like that. It was so fun. Like it was enjoyable to be able to watch the game and see the shape shifting, see things change in real time, see Xabi Alonso be so proactive with tactical changes, personnel changes, just the intensity he has in training and on the sidelines and all that stuff. It was a breath of fresh air, to be honest. And no disrespect to Carlo, but it was just a breath of fresh air. And I think we're in for an exciting season in terms of hey, maybe it doesn't all click this year, and maybe it doesn't all come together, but I think we're going to see a lot of things that we do like, and I think we're going to see progress, which we didn't see last year. I think we'll see progress, and then I wrote about how kind of early in the summer when Xabi Alonso was first announced that I think success can be viewed in multiple different ways. It just doesn't have to be this plethora of trophies. And I think like the connection we may see with Arbeloa and Castilla and youth getting integrated and um, some other like structure that he puts into the club and some of his ideas and stuff like that. I think that will be progress, and I think that'll be exciting, especially for folks like ourselves and our listeners. I think who are more our listeners are more niche and like want to talk about the football, don't really want to talk about transfers and all that. Like of course like transfers to a degree, but really want to hear about the hard hitting analysis and why did this happen and what happened in this game for what reason. And I think we'll be able to dissect more of that and have more fun with that type of stuff. So
And I've already had a blast, in these first 6 games. And your take that the PSG game was needed Xabi Alonso needed to see it is my optimistic take as well. So we're going to jump into it. Guys, I know most of you are listening to this on Spotify or Apple or on your podcast app while you're driving. If you're on YouTube, you'll get the added benefit of some nice visuals here that we put for you guys on the screen so that you'll be able to look at them and follow along visually. But if you're not on YouTube, you'll still get a lot of it through audio form anyway. Matt, what do you think? We're going to start with talking about formations and what Xabi Alonso will do on the field on paper. 3-4-3, 3-5-2, 3-4-1-2, all these variations. 4 at the back. Are we going to see that? What do you think Xabi Alonso is going to use here?
that's a good question. I think it will be a lot of what we saw at the Club World Cup. And I think the starting formation may be on paper what looks like a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1. But I think we're going to be shape shifting in game, like we saw at the Club World Cup. And this was a consistent theme at Leverkusen was Xabi's team's ability to just change in game. And so Chouameni, we know, is going to be an important person in this regard. Like what game was it? I think it was the third game against, was it Pachuca, where he or maybe Salzburg, where he gradually just would go from DM to third center back and back again. And like Xabi Alonso actually talked after the game about how he left that decision up to Chouameni to make that call, depending on the game state and where he saw things, where he felt he could be most effective. I found that fascinating, and I think that's what we're going to see a lot of. So I think it'll be a hybrid between the three center back system and a double pivot, two double sixes with Arda and Chouameni predominantly being that double six.
So it's interesting because when we talk about Xabi Alonso and we talk about Real Madrid, 3 at the back is not a common thing that we see at Real Madrid, and especially in the club's modern history. And I remember a few days ago, Lucas asked me, do you think that he'll play 3 at the backs, even though, starting the next season? And I said, yeah, definitely. Like, I don't see any other way around it. Like, I think this was a question mark heading into the Club World Cup where we weren't sure. And a lot of us, including myself, kind of like aired on the other side that, like, just because he played it there doesn't mean he'll play it here. He has to be more versatile. He'll come to a different realization here when he sees the different sets of players and different combinations he has to use, and how to make it work. He probably won't, but he may also not play 3 at the back. And then I think right off the bat in the first like 10 seconds against Al Hilal, and then throughout the entire tournament, it was 3 at the back with Chouameni, as you put it so many times in your articles, the pillar of the whole system. So I think we will continue to see it. And if you reflect on Xabi Alonso's Bayer Leverkusen side, very rarely did he deviate from 3 at the back. That I think he was probably more versatile than we gave him credit for, but largely speaking, it was 3 at the back. And if it wasn't a 3-4-3, which is the formation you use primarily, it was some variation of it, 3-4-1-2, 3-5-2. And as you said, the formation shifting within the game, but very rarely did you see anything other than three at the back. Like you saw it here and there, maybe less than a handful of games, but it was very rare. So I assume we continue to see that. And we'll talk about, who fills those roles later in the podcast. But I'm very, very interested to get your thoughts on a lot of these questions and some of the combinations you can use, because I literally have not spoken to you pretty much all summer. So I'm very excited to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think our personnel now, with some of the new transfers especially, has made this more feasible than it probably was even last year. And you heard Xabi Alonso talk about the lack of options at center back during the Club World Cup, and why maybe he hasn't just initially gone for it right away, because he's like, hey, we just don't have enough guys fit and ready to do that. But I think that will be different at the start of the season with Militao now back, and Alaba coming back shortly, and just more Carreras who can play both and a third center back role and a left back role. So I think you have more guys who are able to play in that type of system, which makes it even more a greater possibility to kind of back up your point, Kiyan. And I think the only time I get a little bit uncomfortable with the three back system is when you have a center back who maybe isn't as comfortable in wide areas, because you do get into situations where, like, the team shifts and it ends up being a four back because maybe one of the center back has to step out or whatever happens. Like, it ends up being a four back, and one of those three center backs then becomes a right back or a left back. And if they're not comfortable under pressure and in those type of situations, that's where I don't love the look of it. And I think we saw some of that in the Club World Cup.
I think the system, even if it just gets to its peak and we fire on all cylinders and there's real cohesion and it improves as the season goes on, it will still have weaknesses like any other blueprint will in the entire, European football. Like if you look at it, even the best teams will have weaknesses. So this one will have weaknesses too. And a lot of it will be making sure our coverage on the high line is efficient. Our center backs are composed, which they weren't. Not all of them anyway. I think Dean Howson definitely gets a pass for the tournament he had, apart from that red card in that last game that he missed. Then he missed the PSG game because of the red card. And Tchouaméni, who was great, but obviously we were nervous with Asensio there, with Rudiger there. And as you said, there will be players kind of filling in at different positions. We saw Fran Garcia even shift to center back at some point, because when Trent goes up the field, he has to keep the three at the back at all times. So sometimes it was Fran, but I think where you saw it really thrive is because you just mentioned that sometimes center backs get pinned to the wide side. Dean Howson, when he had to go to the left side, was brilliant.
Yeah.
And to be able to unlock Fran Garcia in that way was great. And I think there are, cons that come with this, but also we get players probably thriving in situations they wouldn't have otherwise thrived in last season without this formation.
Why do you think I find it funny how some people are just so philosophically opposed to just a formation, without even seeing it. Like, they hear Real Madrid's going to play with three center backs and they're aghast. Why do you think that is? Because in theory you could be playing an even more attacking, high octane, more entertaining type of football with that formation, but just because it's three center backs, people are just like, nope, no way.
I think it's just perception and also what Real Madrid fans are used to. We haven't seen stuff like this at Real Madrid in a few years, right? And certainly three at back specifically, almost never. Zidane experimented with it a little bit. He used
maybe
it a little
bit. 30 years, Karanka, Campo, and Hierro, right?
Yeah, I mean, you go that far back,
that was the last time we did it consistently. So I think it was 30 years ago.
Well, but also I think there's this perception at Real Madrid where fans say we don't do that tactical stuff here. We win titles, we do whatever it takes, and and I think part of the resistance, Matt, too, was that we have so many midfielders and so few reliable center backs on paper that it didn't really add up. But I think the way around that essentially was that it's not a third center back in the mix. It's just Tchouaméni dropping deeper. That's all. It's just a very simple simple tweak. It's actually like you could take to take a 4-3-3 with this exact team. He's taken it and just without inserting a pure center back in putting three real pure center backs, he's just shifted Chouameni's positioning and made him play a little bit deeper.
Well, and this might get into our next point. I might be pushing it here, but like just in terms of fluidity and where you want Chouameni, like I don't like Chouameni with his back to goal. I don't like Chouameni picking it up in a defensive midfield spot and trying to be the guy. Like maybe he's playing like um with his body angled sideways or he's back to goal. Like I don't think he's good in that regard. When he's facing the up and sees the whole field from the third center back position, that's when I think he's at his best and can distribute really well. But I
Yeah.
don't think he distributes well from the number 6 spot.
Well,
I think he
you're saying
struggles.
essentially he's not a recipient outlet. He is the guy who should be starting the play.
Yeah.
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 And I think specifically with the way Xabi Alonso plays, when Chouameni receives the ball, he can just look up and he has so many options. And that's the
Yeah.
benefit of Xabi Alonso's style of play is that he's not going to be Chouameni and like Dean House and these guys who have been really good distributing from the back in that tournament in the Club World Cup. They had very little trouble finding outlets, especially with Güler dropping deep, especially with the
Yeah.
way Jude has been moving between the lines. The wing backs are high up the field. You have Vinny and Gonzalo Garcia for most of that tournament positioning themselves in these situations where they can be fluid and roam and they can be targets, they can be outlets. And I think there is a clear like method to Xabi Alonso's football in that the ball progression is very clear. When the deep line players like Chouameni, like Housen, like Güler get the ball, there is a clear avenue forward. You can either play it to Jude, you can play it to Fede, you can play it high to the wing backs, and everyone's moving between lines, and there's a channel occupied in every zone moving forward. And I think it was the Juve game, because the Juve game, if you remember, at halftime, everyone was kind of worried, like, okay, this hasn't looked great. Our press wasn't as good as it was. The high line looks vulnerable. And there was a simple tweak, and part of it was putting Chouameni, in midfield to help Güler in that second half. But also, I was observing that first half, and that if you look at it, we had very few clear-cut opportunities, and a lot of them, like the two that we had, I think were long distance shots. One was from Fede, I think, and another one from Jude, if I'm not mistaken. But if you look at our build-up structure, even though we weren't really carving out clear-cut chances, you could see the vision. You could see the fact that we were always looking for an open man. We were always moving between the lines. Every zone was occupied with a white shirt, and there was a fluidity to it. And there was, even if it was a long distance shot, I mean, that's part of it. We moved it around until we found an open man to carve out a shot. And I think with Xabi Alonso, you'll see that patient football. And I think the real magic actually happens when we lose possession, because now we're in a chance where we can counter press and we can win the ball high up the pitch and create opportunities and create these artificial transition opportunities that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And I think one of the things that struck me, Matt, was that when Real Madrid were building up against Juve, even in that first half, where the perception was that Real Madrid struggled, I was looking at it, and the vantage point we have as journalists in that stadium was like you're kind of behind the goal, but you could kind of see like this whole aerial map of the entire plan. And I was looking at it, I was like, if Real Madrid lose it here, there's no way Juve can do anything.
Yeah.
Juve can't even put a pass together the way we're positioned. We were so positionally superior to them, even when we were struggling to find an opening. And I was like, if Real Madrid lose possession here, Juve will lose it immediately. And that's exactly what happened. And I think part of this build-up structure is also that it feeds in to winning the ball and creating chances that way as well.
Yeah. No, and I love that you share that because when you get that vantage point in the stadium that you don't always get on the TV, like you get to see, okay, this is why we're doing what we're doing. This is why it makes sense. Here's our rest defense. Here's our positioning. Here's our high line. Like you see how they're just suffocated and they can't get out. And so um, I agree with you, and I think I think we're definitely going to see the build-up piece and the exit ball out of the back be just fundamental to Xabi Alonso this season, and why um, Howson was so important, why that signing was pushed through. And I think even Carreras, like I think that's going to be one of his strong points, both receiving the ball and playing the exit pass. And I think the reason Arda is now playing so much deeper is because we need, even if it comes with risk, because hey, maybe he physically is not going to win every 50-50 duel, and maybe he doesn't have the stamina yet to play a full 90, but you need a player who can pick up, kind of do exactly what I was saying Chouameni doesn't do well, like play with his back to goal, have a man hounding him, and evade the pressure, retain possession, and play, be able to play a slipped in ball between the lines to Jude Bellingham, to Mastantuano, to whoever it may be. And I think that's something like the pros will probably outweigh the cons with Arda, and I think he'll continue to grow in that role. And so I liked everything I saw from Xabi Alonso in that regard, and the decisions he made there to help facilitate our build-up play, because I think that's something we really, really struggled with last year. Like that was one of our biggest Achilles heels.
I agree, and we're gonna have a segment before this episode is over on Arda Güler and Chouameni and some other players that I think are really fascinating to discuss. This next point is, no pun intended, a pressing issue. I think it's one of the main talking points, if not the main talking point, coming out of the Club World Cup with the way it ended and the way the team crashed out against PSG. And it's about the team's defensive structure and what happened against PSG. Now, I don't think Real Madrid's defense was perfect in the first 5 games. Like, so I'm not going to pinpoint, Mbappe's return as the sole reason why all this happened, because I think if you look at it, Courtois had to come up big a lot against that, trying to defend that high line that Real Madrid did get exposed from several times in those games against Juve. Dortmund, a little bit, especially like late on the second half. Salzburg is probably the only team that didn't really put up much of a fight against us. But there are vulnerabilities. But what happened against PSG was problematic, because that was the first game where the press really, really did not do a good job at all. And I think in those other games, even though we did have some bleeding on defense in that high line, we had numerous sequences where we won the ball high up the pitch, we suffocated the opponent, we counter-pressed, we pressed them really efficiently on goal kicks. And you look at our defensive structure behind the ball, Matt, when the opposing team is trying to build out, the way Vinicius and Gonzalo Garcia were narrow, just pressing the center backs, and you had the positioning of Trent and Fran Garcia high up the pitch, pinning the wing backs, and then you had Jude and Fede pushing up narrow as well. And all of a sudden, we had this situation where we were winning the ball high up the pitch pretty regularly. And PSG game was the first game we just really didn't have that. So in addition to our defense being terrible, we also had this issue where the press fell apart. And whether you want to press or not, because I've seen this argument a lot, Matt, that people say like, oh, why are you guys making a big deal out of this? Because Xabi Alonso doesn't have to press if he doesn't want to. And I think that's missing the point, because whether you want to press or not, your first line of defense, especially when you have a high line, is extremely important. Mm-hmm. From that situation, you're not defending from the back. So while we can talk about mistakes from Rudiger and Asensio and others, you will, if you had, a backline of Ramos and Maldini and Cannavaro and Nesta, but you're consistently getting burned with the first line of press, and you have 6-8 players with numerical superiority in transition against those guys, even those great defenders will struggle. So it starts from the front with Xabi Alonso's scheme. So please give me your thoughts on what happened against PSG. Can this be solved? Can this work? Because I know you and I are kind of on the same page as this, and we're worried about whether the defensive structure can hold up with Mbappe and Vinny together.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot to unpack here. I think maybe first off, when people say, "Oh, we don't have to press," yeah, we don't have to, and I think there will be. I think Xabi Alonso's Real Madrid will be multifaceted in that they'll be kind of like the chameleon of the Real Madrid past with Zidane, where they'll be able to play in multiple different ways. But I think pressing will be something that he wants to get right and will be a core component of what he wants to do. I think we saw that at the Club World Cup, and I think that will continue. Um, and the reason for that is because when you do press and when you do get it right and you're high up the pitch, the pros out the pros tend to outweigh the cons. Like there's a reason why so many teams are doing this nowadays. It's because you're you're sometimes 10, 15, 20 yards from goal rather than 60, 70, 80 yards from goal when you play in a low block and you're defending and you have so much ground you have to make up to get closer to the opposition's goal. When you win the ball high up the pitch from pressing, it creates there's stats behind this, and like it creates a lot more goal scoring opportunities. And when you have players as lethal as ours, like that's just usually the risk is worth the reward. And so I think that's why Xabi Alonso is going to persist with this, and I think that's why, like, when people question it, it takes time and you have to do it right, but it can reap a lot of rewards. And so um, to your point, with pressing, everything starts with that first line of defense, that front line. And so um, we've all had the numerous conversations on Mbappe and Vinny and what they can do. And I've been listening to the mailbag whenever I can. And I know, Kiyan, you've been making the point of like, hey, like Vinicius can press. He's done this, and for whatever reason, when Mbappe is on the field, he just stops. And I think part of the reason for that is because, and anybody who's kind of been in this situation before probably nod their head to this, is like when you're pressing, but you're doing it alone, and the other person, or like the other person, your other members of your team aren't following through or aren't doing it, then you're just like, fuck this, I'm not doing this. Like there's no point in me doing it because I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off. Like I'm not going to be effective if he's not doing it with me. So I'm just going to stop. So I think that might be kind of maybe what's happening is like Vinny's like, maybe he starts out the game trying to press and then he sees like, okay, this guy's not even, what's the point? I'm just going to be running around. And I think Cruz actually made this point like a couple weeks ago or something similar to that vein. And I think that's going to be the biggest issue for Xabi Alonso. I don't see it. I personally, this is a guy that's in Kylian Mbappe that has never pressed before. So I think you can get him to maybe incrementally get better, but I don't think he's going to turn into Dembele all of a sudden. Like I think it's going to be an issue where it's going to have to be one of the two. Like I truly don't believe you can get away with both of them. I said that last year. I still say that. Like I believe it. I truly believe it, and I think it may take another season for people to like buy it, and it may even take a season for Xabi Alonso to try things out to like truly buy it. But I think 12 months from now, if like I think we'll be ending up with either playing a different way or one of the two starting in big games.
So I think the argument so far has been that, well, let's not overreact to one game because we saw it for a season not working, right? And I quite frankly, like, with the way, if it continues the way it's continuing, right now, and by right now I mean the season we had under Carlo Ancelotti and what we saw against PSG, and that continues to be a theme, then I could see this team winning more games next season, but struggling in the big games against teams who can
Yeah.
really expose that weakness. So maybe your floor gets raised with Xabi Alonso, but to really hit that ceiling, you can't play defense like this, essentially.
Yeah.
And I think the argument was after that PSG game, because we saw it for a whole season, so we had enough sample size there. But then the argument was like, okay, but we've only seen it once with Xabi Alonso, and that's completely fair. That's a reasonable statement to me. But I do think, like, at what point do we really do become worried? Like, if like we get to Christmas and the big Champions League games, we don't know who we're playing yet, obviously, and the Clásicos and the Atléticos. If the team gets exposed because you're playing these guys together, and our press gets picked apart, then I think at that point you really have to start believing that this is a problem. And there's two situations here. One is that Xabi Alonso gets them to buy in because, first of all, there's the effort part of it, right? You have to work harder. The second part of it is that you also have to get your pressing angles right, and you have to know when to step and what angle to step at, and make sure everyone does it, together. That's very important too. And if they don't, you know, it's going to be a messy situation either way, because you have to bench one and you win, and that's going to be really hard to manage, the off-field distraction. If you lose, it's even worse, obviously, because now they're like,
Yeah.
okay, what was the point of doing this if you're going to lose?
Yeah.
So I think so. I think for this to work, he needs the buy-in from the superstars, and he needs them to buy in all the way for the greater good. And I hope it can work, because if it doesn't, then he has to bench someone, and no one can get mad at him for doing that, because it's the team that's at stake here. It's his job that's at stake. He can't just let it slide, continue. We can't just be okay with, winning all these games in between. Whether it's Osasuna on the first match day, or the Celta Vigos, or the Leganeses, or whoever we're playing at home, but and then get cooked and get destroyed by teams who their bread and butter is, pressing triggers and escaping pressure. And so those teams are really going to expose you if you play a high line. So that's where this, to me, is at the top of the list of priorities that needs to get fixed.
Agreed. And I think I almost, with Gonzalo Garcia's rise and his performances, he kind of reminded me of like a tool that Xabi Alonso could use, like Sir Alex Ferguson did with Park Ji-sung. You remember how Park Ji-sung used to always play the big games, the Champions League games? Like one of Tevez, Rooney, or Nani would be dropped, and Park Ji-sung would play all the big games. And I almost feel like he's going to have to do something like that. Like maybe Gonzalo Garcia is like his trump card, where when the big games roll around, one of the attackers is dropped or somebody's dropped, and Gonzalo is the one that plays, because he does everything you need a Xabi Alonso system to do. And he can play in multiple different positions, and he can, like, you just watch him off the ball defensively. Man, not only does he remind you of Raul, like on the ball and with his finishing, but he reminds you of Raul with his work ethic too, because he just nonstop. Just I loved it. So that's kind of what went through my head watching him during the Club World Cup.
I mean, what you're describing is essentially the Marcelo Coentrao thing for a
Yeah.
couple years under
Yeah.
Mourinho, and also under Carlo Ancelotti, where Marcelo would play a bunch of games, but when it came to Champions League finals, semifinals, whatever, Coentrao was there just as an insurance policy on defense. So it's possible. Like, I don't think you need to bench both of them against Osasuna on the opening match day. Certainly not. But if it doesn't get fixed, that your solution might work out. Anything else on the pressing that you want to address?
Um, I don't think so. I think I would just say I was pleasantly surprised by it for the most part. Like it's
Yeah,
the
me too.
best we've seen it in a while. And like I think early last year I mentioned how I've never seen a Madrid team press well. Like in all my lifetime of watching Real Madrid, we've done it well in spurts and like in moments and in certain games, but never consistently over a season. So if Xabi Alonso can pull that off, kudos to him, because I've still never seen it. But this was probably, in terms of like consecutive runs, some of the best we've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you and I spoke about, like, throughout the season, was that, if you're gonna struggle on defense with a top-heavy team that's a little bit imbalanced, you might get away with it if you're scoring a bajillion goals and blowing teams out of the water. And I think that was part of the problem too, that also didn't happen last season.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, again,
But
because
the two are connected too, though, because I feel
yes,
like people forget that. They're like, oh well, if you just, as long as they're scoring goals, then it's fine. But no, just like people try to say that economics of a football club and sporting results aren't connected. Like it's all connected. It's all you can't do well with one or the other. Like maybe you can get away with it for a little bit, but over a longer trend and over a longer period, all that catches up with you. So like in order to attack well, you need to defend well and you need to be in the right position with your rest defense and all of that and like conserve your energy. And if you're winning the ball higher up the pitch, it'll result in more goal scoring chances. So I get frustrated when people make that arguments because like the game, especially at this level now, it's all interconnected and you can't just dismiss one phase of the game for the other.
Jurgen Klopp has this quote because this was something that he said that was a talking point when he had to get his stars to press. At that time it was, the famous trio of Firmino and Salah and Mane. And someone asked him, how do you convince those guys to defend? And Klopp said, quote, I told everyone that as long as you're not Messi, you have to defend. And I think this kind of fits into this conversation because I do think a lot of people don't realize how connected defense is to offense. Like if you want Mbappe to score 50 goals, if you want Vinicius to score, like they don't have to score 50 goals. I'm just making up numbers. Like Vinicius doesn't have to score 30 goals to win a Champions League. What we need is just the team to buy in. And obviously Vinicius and Mbappe, as the leaders of the attack, we look to them and that's where the pressure is. And so for them to lead by example would take this team to the promised land, in my opinion, because I don't like if Vinicius and Mbappe hit form together, there really isn't anyone who can stop that. Like, but we still haven't. It's kind of like more of a theoretical conversation right now.
Yeah.
But I do think people don't realize how connected pressing is to creating chances for those players. So that is an important issue that we wanted to address, and I'm sure Xabi Alonso is working on it. And again, because we don't really know what's going to happen, we're not prophets, but maybe a solution is that they don't press aggressively with those two on the field every game, and maybe they just strategize like, okay, on goal kicks we're gonna press, or in these situations we're gonna press.
Yeah, you pick your
And
moments.
yeah, we can go in a mid block. I think the other thing to note is that Carlo Ancelotti played a mid block for the entirety of that season, and it was still very permeable.
Yeah.
So the defensive structure just in general needs to be tightened up. And Matt, you remember that PSG game when everything was just getting ripped apart. I think one of the unfortunate things was that a lot of people came away thinking like, and maybe they're not wrong because I think the midfield did get outplayed, so I won't disagree there. But where I took issue was that they blamed a lot of things on Güler, and I just thought like there was really not much he can do when it's just math. If PSG bypassed the first three players,
Yeah.
now they have numerical superiority for the rest of the field. And so Güler or Fede or Jude or whoever or worse like Asensio and Rudiger in that back line, they're always going to be outnumbered by at least two players. So that's the other thing you have to factor in when you talk about like the efficiency of the midfield. Everyone just will not be able to do their job on either end of the field.
Yeah, and I mean, people that feel like, oh, we're Real Madrid, we don't press, or we're Real Madrid, we don't play three at the back, or Real Madrid, we don't do this tactico thing. Like, I think, well, one, like we have had more strict tacticians in the past and recently with guys like Mourinho and Capello, and they've had success. But two, I think I think you have to balance it. Like I don't disagree in terms of like, hey, Real Madrid's kind of always been the antithesis of Pep Guardiola and like that systemic play, but it is like I think we got so far away from it that we lost some structure and we just need to tighten the reins a little bit. And like I feel like in anything in life you can't overindulge on one thing and I feel like we did. And I think we just need to get a little bit more balanced now and I think Xabi Alonso will do that. Maybe he'll edge it a little bit more to focus on the tactics. Like maybe like it's a 60-40 or 70-30 now whereas before it was like a 80-20, 90-10 on like free play and not so much tactics. Like I think we now need to kind of push in the other direction pretty hard, and then maybe we center ourselves after like 12 to 18 months of like actually getting some conceptual plays and just like some the reins tightened around this team because it's just been so chaotic.
What about the personnel? I think we can like shift into the conversation of who's going to start, and what are the roles that need to be filled if Xabi Alonso is going to play three at the back, and you need to integrate Vinicius and Mbappe together because even though they've been playing together for a year or so, Xabi Alonso has spoken in the press room about I have ideas on how to make it work, and I'm very interested to see how those ideas are. And again, to be completely fair to him, we can't judge it based on that one game, especially that was Mbappe's first start as well. So, how do you see the roles? Who starts? Who starts where?
So I think all three, or sorry, so we've made four signings. I think at the very least three of them are guaranteed starters in Trent, Carreras, and Housen. And so that's basically just revitalized your whole back line. And I think all three of those players, I think the characteristics that stand out is their comfort on the ball and their comfort playing out of the back and their comfort finding the exit pass, as we talk about. And particularly with Trent higher up the pitch, his ability to just play unbelievable passes, like the kind of 2025 version of Beckham and Alonso and Michel, like all that's who he is in my mind. And so I think those three just quickly transform what we're capable of in terms of playing out of the back, in terms of the build-up phase, playing under pressure, which we really struggled with last year. So I do see all three of those starting. I think Chouameni in his hybrid role. So let's just call it a third center back, kind of in the middle there, and then um, one of Militao or Rudiger. I think Militao actually fits the role better, but it just depends on can he stay healthy, how does he come back. But if Militao is fit and healthy, I would probably opt for him over Rudiger. Um, and then in midfield, I like the Arda. Like I know it comes with its issues, but I like Arda there. I like Fede there. And then you've got we already mentioned Trent and Carreras on the wing, and then 3-4-3 or 3-5-2, whatever you want to call it. We saw Jude play kind of that right attacking midfield role. I think that's where he'll end up. Uh, then you have Vinny in the left attacking midfield role. Like he was playing less wide in those final few games. And then it's Mbappe up front or Gonzalo Garcia, like just depending on what Xabi Alonso decides. But I think that's going to be the team.
Yeah, I think, and something. Let me correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm going to summarize it, and I think I'm going to get it right. But you said Courtois, Trent, um, Rudiger,
Militao if he's healthy, but yeah,
or
one of
Militao,
those two.
Housen, Carreras, Chouameni, Jude, Fede, probably Vinicius or Mbappe. Vinicius and
Arda,
Mbappe
you
up top,
forgot Arda too.
and Arda
Yeah,
as well. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. So I think what's interesting, Matt, too, is that this is not a symmetrical lineup either way. Like you're not going to have a pure right winger in the team. So
yeah.
that's going to again be a thing. Like if we know that like it's Carreras and Vinicius on the left wing. On the right, it's a little bit more like Trent plus who's going to drift to that side. Jude's going to be roaming. Fede is obviously going to be around that side. Gonzalo Garcia and Mbappe are going to both be central no matter who starts. But I think it's interesting that, we have options on the bench, and I know we can sit here and say, well, how real is the depth of players like Alaba and Ferland Mendy and Camavinga's health has been up and down. Same with Dani Ceballos. And at the time of this recording, we're not entirely sure what's going to happen with Rodrigo. But if not him, Masantuono is going to be there. Brahim's going to be there. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. And I think just to talk about two players in particular, Güler and Chouameni, because when we're talking about Chouameni being the pillar, it seems to me that Güler actually will be too in a different way, because I think he's a very, very unique profile in the squad that we have right now. And you mentioned those four signings. I'm going to be a little bit lame and cliche here and state that I think we have two other new signings, even though they're not new signings. Gonzalo Garcia and Arda Güler to me are kind of like new signings this year,
Yeah.
because Gonzalo Garcia, for obvious reasons, we saw like what he's capable of, and he's going to play way more than his very brief like kind of honorary cameos last season. And Arda Güler is going to be used completely differently this season to the way he was barely used last season.
Yeah.
And he comes with this role of like he's going to drop into midfield. He's not going to be that high up the pitch. He has spoken about it. Xabi Alonso has spoken about it. We've seen it with our own eyes on the field. I think his ball progression and division is terrific. I think he has the composure to drop between the center backs and help with the ball progression. So that's one. My question to you is this. What are the options in games where Tchouaméni and Güler are not there, assuming that they're not going to play every game in the season?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think it might have to be like, let's say we play that same system we just talked about. I think the Tchouaméni role might have to be somebody like Howson or Alaba, even if he can get healthy and get like. I think people. I've seen a lot of disrespect for Alaba lately. Like, yeah, I get the guy just came back from an ACL injury. Like, give him a break. Like, he could come back. He could like be serviceable, not have to be a starter, but could be a serviceable player this year. And his profile actually fits really well with what Xabi
Yeah.
Alonso wants to do.
I mean,
So
could you imagine peak Alaba in the system? He
yeah,
would be
he'd
the
be incredible.
perfect. I mean, you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that like sometimes our center back's going to be kind of pinned to the left side. Alaba's perfect for that ball progression. He could also even play in midfield the way Tchouaméni can. I mean, like as like a versatile option who can kind of fill that role. Peak Alaba would be perfect. Like so, like if Xabi Alonso can get Alaba back to like I don't know 80%. I don't know, is that
Even
pessimistic,
yeah,
optimistic? I'm not sure, but
yeah, and even if you can get Carvajal back, like I could see Carvajal playing as a right center back, and then like you move Howson over, and then you have Militao or Rudiger, and like so then your back three is like slightly different, but we have enough options there that like I think you could cover Tchouaméni through the defense actually rather than a midfielder. With Arda, that's tougher, like because he's such a unique profile and one we've been talking about all last year that we don't have. I think Kamavinga could do it. I do think Kamavinga sometimes struggles with his back to goal, and being that guy that can handle the pressure in those deep positions, like near your own goal. But I do
can I
think
give
if
you the unexpected wild card? I think he's the wild card every year, but I think he's going to be a wild card this year again. I think Dani Ceballos.
Oh yeah, Ceballos. Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Ceballos fan.
Yeah.
I always bring him up, but yeah, him definitely. Like he can definitely do it. And I just think it's so funny how quick people have been to like write off all these guys and like Ceballos was like our savior halfway through the year last year. Now people want him gone, are pissed that he won't leave. Like what the hell?
Yeah.
and then
Lucas
and
reported that he's going to stay, and people were like angry in the replies. Like,
it
I
just
can't
makes
believe we're
zero.
keeping Dani
we were
Ceballos.
all we were all devastated that he wouldn't be able to play like after he got his injury against Arsenal and stuff. And now we're like, oh, why are we keeping Ceballos? Like,
The
makes no
best
sense to me.
football that Real Madrid played last season was the Tchouaméni Ceballos double pivot.
Yeah, yeah, by
Yeah.
far.
So
And like, yeah, I was just gonna say, like, think about the games he played, like in the Copa del Rey that one time when he completely shifted the game against Villarreal and scored 2 goals, and like he's transformed some game for, and like in the Champions League, that first year with Ancelotti, he got like 10, 15 minutes, but he always played super really, really well. So yeah, definitely a serviceable player and an age and profile that like we don't have and probably need in the squad.
yeah,
Like you just need some of those types of guys around. And so yeah, him and I think that is an area though that Arda role and that deep lying role that we struggle with, and just having the right guys there.
who takes Bellingham's role to start the season while he recovers from his shoulder surgery?
I think it's probably Brahim, if I had to guess. But I mean, we'll see with Mastan Tuano. Like there is um, a lot of noise around him. I mean, I watched him I watched his game against Boca Juniors, and I watched all his games at the Club World Cup. I personally don't think he's ready to start. Like I don't think I don't think he would be better than Brahim. I could be very wrong, and he could like. I know that people are just, especially those in Argentina and those who have watched many of his games, are just completely enamored with him. But from what I saw, there's still a lot of growing pains, and there's still um like I don't know if you watched the game against that River Plate played against Rayados, but Ramos dominated him. Sergio Ramos dominated him, and it was yeah, I just think it's going to take a little time for him to get up to speed. He's not even 18 yet, so that's kind of understandable.
I'd like to talk about the wingbacks too before we wrap it up. Just a couple more notes from a tactical perspective. Trent, we mentioned a little bit, but not that much. I think, going back and rewatching a lot of those Club World Cup games, I think Trent was actually one of the most interesting players to me because he didn't look 100%. He looked a little bit leg heavy at times. I think match fitness was lacking.
Yeah.
Obviously, there were concerns about the high line and the players covering for him, but he did a lot of great things from a ball progression standpoint. Like there's an art form where he can get the ball with one touch, control it. The first touch is just to set up the second touch, which is a 40-yard diagonal pinpoint. And I think he misplaced a couple of those, but he also hit a couple of those bang on in the tournament that set Vinicius free, Gonzalo Garcia free. Obviously, he had a couple assists as well, and he is always there. And I think once we see Trent getting going, I think he's going to be a huge asset for the team. And I think when we talk about ball progression and stuff, and also like midfielders, one of the things that we didn't talk about much is that when Real Madrid build up, Trent actually is an inverted right back. So he goes into the midfield in a central position and he helps the team from that position. And we saw it a little bit with Fran too, but not as much. And I think on the opposite wing back, and you and I both agree that Carreras will probably start, although Fran Garcia has benefited from Xabi ball so far from what we've seen. I think Carreras also gets the nod in part because he's better under pressure than Fran Garcia is. And I think that is also going to be a big asset to have. And I think just by nature, it would be impossible for the team not to improve next season, just in part because there's 4 wingbacks now in the team that can be used. So we went from 1 wingback last season, which was Fran Garcia, to 4 because Vasquez is, I'm talking about pure wingbacks. So obviously Carvajal wasn't there, Mendy was injured, and we just had Lucas Vasquez and Fede Valverde. So to go from that to now Carvajal, Fran Garcia, Carreras, Trent, and obviously we still have Mendy. We don't not entirely sure what version of him exists now, but he's in the squad.
It's every other year with Mendy, right? So we're on a good year now.
We're on the good year, and we're not going to be asking much from him. So maybe with less pressure, he'll be fighting also for a spot in the limited cameos he gets. Xabi Alonso likes to rotate. So yeah, one more thing, Matt, before we wrap it up here. I think there's one thing that we missed that we both wanted to talk about, and that's set pieces.
Yeah.
Talk about where you see the improvement there.
Yeah, and I mean, this kind of builds off from your point on Trent, which, by the way, 100% agree. Like, I think we saw in limited kind of glimpses of what he can provide, but it was just like the tip of the iceberg. I think there's so much more to come from Trent. I think he'll end up being someone that we all come away from at the end of the season just being like, wow, like what a football player, what qualities this guy has. It's just unbelievable. I think he's going to take our breath away with some of his passes and some of his vision and things of that nature. And yeah, I think set pieces are going to be like, I think that could win us 6 points this year and maybe even like get us over the line in certain Champions League games. Like, I think it's going to be that important. And I think now that we have 2 specialists like Trent and Arda on the field, one to left foot, one to right foot too, I think it's a total game changer for us. And you also have some more height with Housen out there, Carreras. Tchouaméni obviously still out there. Like, I think when you play with three center backs, theoretically you're going to have more height out there. So I think all of that is going to be beneficial to us this year.
Matt Wiltse, thanks so much for helping us preview Xabi Alonso's first season at Real Madrid. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys enjoy the visuals as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this, you want more of this, make sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Hit like on the video. And if you want to get a ton of bonus content where we go even deeper on Real Madrid and discuss a lot of things and give you guys a lot of bonus content, join the family over on patreon.com/Managing Madrid. Or if you're on YouTube, you can also join the memberships tab on this YouTube channel or hit join underneath this video. Matt, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Take care.